Welcome, FNusa57 here. Once again, I'm back on my Xbox Series X to bring you another Elden Ring guide. In today's video, I'm going to be covering how to get something that probably a lot of people have and a lot of people have dismissed. And that is going to be the Mimic Tier Ash. And, well, I like to call it a Legendary Ash. It's basically, arguably, even after the nerf, one of the top two ashes in the game, especially factoring in its versatility. So, I'm going to explain exactly how to get it and show you how to go through all of the steps. Bear with me as far as the video being a little bit longer, but we're going to take you from the very beginning. Now, there's a few things that you're going to do, and you're going to need to actually get to Nokron, the Eternal City. So, you can't get this right away when you start the game, but you can get it fairly early on. Basically, as soon as you are actually able to get past Godric the Grafted in Stormvale Castle, go up and kill the boss in Caria Manor to actually go and talk to Ranni and advance Ranni the Witch's questline. Then you will need to go ahead and do the Starscourge Radahn fight and defeat him. And once you defeat Starscourge Radahn, you will actually be able to enter Nokron. Now, I do have video guides for like the Starscourge Radahn fight and other things, but most people have probably done this as it is a required step in Ranni's questline. Now, when you get here, you can go and take your time in Nokron, the Eternal City. It's completely up to you. Most of the enemies aren't too terribly difficult in this area, but you're going to need to proceed from the main point where I'm showing, and we actually have to do quite a bit of work in order to get this. So first and foremost, we have to explore the city a little bit, and we actually have a boss that kind of sets the stage for this ash that we'll be getting. So if you already know what the ash is, basically it is something that copies your character. If you didn't know that, well, you definitely want it, especially if you don't get to play in co-op all the time. So you're pretty much going to just be advancing down this area, and you'll see the boss fog wall. Now, depending on what level you are and what build you have, this could be a fairly difficult fight. So I'll go ahead and give you a pro tip. Pro tip, equip your absolute weakest weapons. Just equip your absolute, like, garbage weapons. If you could give them a wooden stick, give them a wooden stick. But just equip something completely just abysmal, something light, so that you can still go ahead and switch to your other weapons. Or you can unequip all of your weapons and armor, personal preference, and make sure that you don't have usable items like throwing pots or darts or something of that nature equipped in this category as well. Because if you have them, for instance, I can put those on, you will risk them being used against you. Now, if you're confident you can go and murder yourself, then, and I don't mean that literally, but figuratively in the game, as you can see, that is myself. And you are fighting the Mimic tier. So what you want to do is give the, or have equipped, I should say, the weakest of the weapons that you can possibly have. Spawn the Mimic in, let it copy you, and then switch your weapons and or equipment over to something a little bit stronger so that you can make short work of this fight. Now, this enemy will heal, and they can use all of the same abilities that you have as far as equipment that's equipped and everything. But if you give them doo-doo weapons, then you really shouldn't have much of a issue. Upon defeating him, you will get the larval tier, you will also get the silver tier mask, and you will gain one sweet, sweet achievement for the Mimic tier. That gives us a little bit of a sneak peek, so to speak, at this upcoming Ash. Now keep in mind you might want to go ahead and actually keep those weak weapons equipped or simply re-equip them, because there's still more that you have to do to get this ash. So simply defeating the Mimic tier is not enough. Okay, for the next step, as soon as you run across that bridge that I was on, you're going to come to this little area that you can pick up an item off of the butterfly. And this is the, I believe it's like Ancestral Woods area. And you want to stick towards the left side until you run into the Site of Grace. Grab the Site of Grace. And then we will be looking for a set of rooftops that we can go ahead and jump from spot to spot on. And of course, there will also be a few more mimics that we have to fight too. But most of the enemies in this area we can kind of just skip. Here's our Site of Grace, which is the Ancestral Wood, so I was right on the name. And now what we have to do is go across the rooftops until we enter the Knight's Sacred Ground. Also, be warned ahead of time, there will be a couple of more mimics that you have to fight, so just keep that in mind. They like to lock all of the really cool things in this game behind jumping puzzles, I've noticed. So here we are at the Knight's Sacred Ground. You have another jump that's a little deceiving, but you can make it. And there's a few various items for you to pick up. Nothing really too crazy. And you'll hear that little poof noise and basically see your, not yourself, because they're not mimic tiers, but they're actual mimics. So now what we have to do is fight through them, and we'll be looking for a stone imp statue that we can use one of the stone sword keys on. Other than that, there's an item up here that you can grab if you want, which it's just a rune arc. And then you kind of have to watch your jump, because you want to make sure that you don't miss this roof and don't fall off the other side of that roof. It is possible to get these mimics to kind of just kill themselves, because these guys have a default form, the silver tier. They don't actually have the ability to copy you. So, personal preference on that matter. You've got another item that you can pick up. And just be careful not to fall off the ledge. As long as you're careful about not falling off, you shouldn't have too many difficulties. This area is fairly straightforward. And then you'll notice you can basically go into this large cathedral building, and this is where we will be looking for our little stone imp statue. So I should just show this from the beginning as a word of warning. You do jump down through those windows into this chapel, but do not drop down into that area with the round ball. Instead, what you want to do is go up to where the altar is. You can grab the black wet blade, which is a pretty important item as well. And then you'll notice that here is our little stone imp statue, which will require you to use the stone sword keys that are then consumed upon using it. And once you do that, there's going to be a guard that we need to kill, and then our long-awaited prize. So it's a really, really, really simple basic enemy here, just a Nock Swordstress. Depending on your level, you can probably just get the backstab and kill him, and then you'll have this chest. It doesn't really look like you can open it, but you can in fact open it, and inside, as you can tell, it's legendary, the one, the only, the giant blob. No, just kidding. The Mimic Tier Ashes. So that is the item that we have been searching for. Of course, you can continue to explore this area if you want, and there is another item that you can pick up, which is just a Smithing Stone 3. But now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to upgrade this ash, in case anybody doesn't know, and also demo it so you guys can see why exactly it is so strong. Anyone that doesn't know how to upgrade ashes, if you start the quest line and then progress it for this Roderica, whatever you want to call her, once you do a couple steps in her quest line, she'll be over here by the blacksmith, and you can do what's called spirit tuning, and you use the grave gloveworts for regular ashes, and then for your special ashes, you have to use the ghost gloveworts. And the ghost gloveworts are basically harder to get. So originally when the game first came out, the Mimic Tier Ashes was considered to be the best in the game. But then it got nerfed. And most people now say it's like second best. And Banished Knight Oleg is considered the best. But I still drastically prefer the Mimic Tier Ashes. Now, the downside to this ash, as opposed to most of the other ashes in the game, this one does not consume FP. This one consumes HP, and a whopping 660 of it to begin with. So depending on the level of your character and your build, you may not even have the HP required to use this. But it is well worth it, even if you only have 601 HP, as long as you can get a heal off afterwards. So, I recommend upgrading this ash as soon as you can. By upgrading it, it will gain both damage and durability. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade this as high as I can, and then, of course, demo it for you. And the last item that you need is the Great Ghost Glovewort. So if you've been doing the catacombs, you probably have enough to go ahead and upgrade that ash to plus 10. Next up, we simply need a willing boss. Now, in order to go ahead and use the Mimic Tier, or any ash for that matter, you will need to have your Spirit Calling Bell, which you probably already got. You should have that very early on in the game. Go ahead and equip the Mimic Tier Ash, and you can select it. Now, you can't use ashes everywhere in the world. You can only use them in certain areas, and the majority of boss fights, as long as you are playing solo. With that being said, real quick before we go in there, anything that you have equipped that you're using, whatever your weapons are, whatever your armor is, the benefit most of the time of your talismans, certain consumable items like weapon grease, darts, if you have them, pots like the oil pot, things of that nature, the Mimic can and will use, which is awesome. The same goes for equipped spells and incantations, depending on exactly what you have equipped at the time when you go ahead and summon this particular monster. Or, I mean, it's basically a monster, but whenever you summon the ash. So, for our little test example, I will not be killing him, but I just want to show you what the Mimic does. I will be bringing in the Mimic in this Lord of Blood fight. And I will be giving the Mimic more of the defensive role. So, while you can use the same weapons as the Mimic, if you want, I will have my Mimic be more of a defensive setup and give him strong armor with the stone shield, which will give him even more survivability. So go ahead and use the Mimic, which takes longer than other summons because he comes in as a blob and then will eventually turn into a copy of you with whatever you have equipped at that time. Once he's spawned in, you can go ahead and switch your build, switch what weapons you have, and proceed to fight the boss. Now, even without super strong armor in the game, the Mimic takes a pretty good beating. Obviously, he won't do like as much damage depending on the weapon that you give him. I gave him a relatively weak weapon, so he's not going to kill the boss. But as you've seen, he did throw a poison dagger at the boss. And he's doing a pretty good job of keeping the boss's aggro while not really taking all that much damage. It's taking like 200 damage in a hit. Now, he's not choosing to really use his shield and block the hits. He's definitely not as good as he used to be, but that's simply because of the nerf to how OP his AI was. But that's okay, though, because he's still a really OP summon. And as you've seen, he just used a weapon grease. You can't control when he puts the weapon grease on or things like that, but it is nice. And even though he used a weapon grease, you can see I still have 30 weapon grease remaining. So the items that he uses are not consumed from your actual inventory. They are completely separate. Now, if I go up here and take a hit, which right now he's literally not interested in me, but you'll see I take more damage than the Mimic does, which is crazy. Now, if you wanted to give the Mimic a different role, you could totally give the Mimic a different role and put him in a more damaging role simply by giving him higher damage weapons. But without me doing anything at all, giving him a level 1, not even upgraded bull ant rapier, he's already managed to inflict poison on the boss and drain Moog, the Lord of Blood, which is considered to be a harder boss, drain him down by 2,700, almost 2,800 damage points before perishing. And that was pretty much as a tank distraction setup. Now, of course, I can't resummon the Ash in the fight, but I will show you in a higher damage setup. So now let's go ahead and see how the Mimic is in a little bit more of a damage roll, which is going to be as a mage. So you'll see that he has the exact same things that I have out. And then either you would be able to tank the boss, or you would be able to just let the Mimic take the boss's aggro. Personal preference, really, at the end of the day. Either way will work. And now you'll see that the Mimic will play differently, and he'll actually use the weapon skills. He'll use the various spells that we have equipped, and he'll use the weapon arts. So right now he's going to favor that plus 10 Moon Veil and probably the Rock Sling spell. But basically, at least on like the first playthrough, depending on your weapons and equipment, playstyle and everything, this dude can almost solo a number of the bosses for you if you equip him correctly. Then add into the fact that, well, you could literally just pop your Mimic, and if you have magic, then go ahead and just go in and annihilate the boss while he's distracted, or literally prep for anything else. That's why I consider this Ash to be literally the best Ash in the game. My opinion, of course, but I'm very curious to see what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. And I do hope that you enjoyed this guide on exactly how to get the Ash, the Mimic tier, and a little bit on how to use it. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, Legion, slap those like and subscribe buttons so you never miss out on a new piece of content, and most importantly, stay frosty.